How Chanel uses psychology to build their multi-billion-dollar empire. Let's talk about it. It's a really interesting topic that was sent my way through Wealth Expanded on the Grams. And their title says, Chanel doesn't just sell luxury, it controls the entire experience. How you walk, how you look, how you feel, and how you buy, they say. And they say every detail in the store is designed to influence your behavior. You think you're choosing the product, but the brand is choosing how you think. I know, very Miranda, The Devil Wears Prada, but there's a few points here that we have to touch base on and also talk together about it to see if we agree or not. This is how Chanel used psychology to build a billion-dollar empire. So, there's a couple of points that Wealth Expanded lists. Let's go through them and see if we agree. First, they say scarcity by design. Chanel limits product supply on purpose. Their bags aren't rare by accident, they're rare by strategy. Less availability equals more obsession. I disagree. No, I agree that scarcity works, but I disagree that this is what Chanel is doing. You see, I remember already back in the day, during the pandemic, when their prices started skyrocketing for their classic bags in particular, one of the things that my sales associate always told me, she's like, Dacob, like when you go to Hermes, they play the scarcity game. You can't just walk in and buy a Birkin and buy a Kelly or a Constance. Like, they're kind of like quota bags. You have to build up a rapport, spending. You have to spend a certain amount of money before they tell you, okay, now if you want, you can buy these. She's like, the big difference between Hermes and Chanel is Chanel doesn't play those games. You got the money, you can buy the product. We don't show all the classics on the sales floor. But if you want a black timeless classic double flap, it's in the back. We have it. You just got to be ready to pay for it. So Chanel plays a different strategy. Chanel plays the price increase strategy. So you're running after FOMO all the time because they increase their prices several times a year. So what they're doing is they're telling you, well, the bag is $5,000, but in 2 weeks it's going to be $6,000. Now, by now, the timeless classic double flaps, the 255 reissues, they've gone from $1,500 to over $10,000 a bag, depending on the size of the bag, depending on the material that the bag is made out of, all the appliques. It can cost you well over $30,000 a bag. But it's there, it's available. If you go to a Chanel sales associate and you say, I got $20,000 to drop on a bag, you best believe they're going to jump through hoops to give you that bag. They need the commish, they need the money. And even if on the bags they might not make all the commission, I think when really expensive bags get into the mix, like more seasonal items that have very special applications on them, those might have some form of commission. Obviously, the best commission for them is if you buy jewelry or clothing. But we digress. So scarcity for Chanel, yeah, no, not really. Not really. There was a short period of time during the pandemic when there was the so-called unicorn bags. Now, the unicorn bags were very popular. Usually they were back in 2020, 2021, 2022, all the way into 2023, and then it stopped. Unicorn Chanel bags were usually the mini rectangular bags in different seasonal colorways. And then the culmination of the unicorn bag were the heart bags from 2021, or was it 2022 spring summer? At this point, we forget. And after that, it kind of all diminished. People were not really obsessed anymore with their unicorn bags. And then the unicorn bag died out for people that were on the luxury YouTube sphere already back in the 2020s. You might remember the conversations, like every season there was a special colorway. That was the unicorn bag. Like everybody remembers the rectangular, like a mochaccino chocolate brown, light brown color. Everybody wanted that one. And then the next one was the 255 rainbow colored mini. Like, every year there was one. Now there is no more unicorn bag just because people don't care as much, right? The trend is not there anymore. But those unicorn bags were hard to get. You needed a good connection with a good sales associate to give you access to the bag as they were sent over to the boutiques because it didn't get many. That is true. But nowadays, no, that has changed. So I don't agree with this point when it comes to Chanel. I don't think Chanel is playing the scarcity game with their bags. I don't think so. Point two, they also restrict who can buy. Many Chanel bags, especially iconic ones, can't be bought online. You have to go to the boutique. The store becomes a gatekeeper, not just a seller. This is written wrong because they're implying, no, they're not implying, they're saying many Chanel bags, especially iconic ones, can't be bought online. Many Chanel bags can't be bought online? No Chanel bags can be bought online. Chanel doesn't sell their bags online. None of them. You always have to go to the boutique to buy them. They also don't sell their clothes online. They don't sell their shoes online. All they sell online is their beauty, makeup, skincare, perfumes, and eyewear. They have from time to time also sent out to a few customers, especially during the lockdown era, links to purchase jewelry, fine jewelry, not costume jewelry, fine jewelry, like diamond rings, gold rings, platinum rings, like stuff like that. But that's also like sometimes available, sometimes not. But no clothing or shoes or bags or costume jewelry is purchasable on the Chanel website. You got to go to the boutique. They don't do that. So they're not really restricting who can buy, but rather restricting how one can buy. You have to go to the boutique to purchase unless you don't call a boutique, identify yourself somehow. Depending on the country you live in, they have different laws and different regulations how you can do that. But you could technically also wire money to a Chanel boutique and they can send you from the boutique an item. But they have to have at least probably once seen you in person so that they can trust you that you're not fraud, blah, blah, blah. Next step, they're saying, now step inside a Chanel boutique. It's not crowded, not loud, not filled with racks. Every detail is intentional and psychological. Yeah, that every detail is psychological and intentional. Yeah, Peter Marino is the architect who does the interior design for most Chanel boutiques. He looks like he came out of what's it, Tom of Finland book, by the way, Peter Marino, he's hilarious. But no, Chanel boutiques were not always empty. They were empty. I remember like in the early 2000s, late 90s, not that popular, right? Then the big boom happened right around 2010, 15. Every time I would go to Chanel boutique, it would be full. Full. And whenever I would travel to Paris for work during Fashion Week, usually June Fashion Week, for men, but also regular Fashion Week or haute couture Fashion Week. So in summer, for example, June, Chanel would launch their Métier d'Art collection, usually the 3rd of June or 4th of June at 31 Rue Cambon. Full, loaded with people, queues outside, full packed on the inside. People would buy whatever they could manage to buy. And this was like 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. And then 2020, we all know what happened. Everything locked down. And then it never really started again. Then Carl passed away in 2019, February 2019. Virginie took over. Things changed quite a bit. And after the pandemic, the prices were so exorbitantly high by that point. The collections weren't that memorable at that point. Everything was much more blasé. See what I did there? Not blasé, blasé. And then nowadays, if you enter a Chanel boutique, it is relatively empty. Yeah, it is. But not because Chanel wants it empty. Well, with their prices, they've priced out most people, so maybe they do want it empty. But even when they were super expensive back in the day, super full. Everybody was obsessed with Chanel, also thanks to Carl. Different times. Now everything is more mellow. Everything is more like, yeah, okay. So it's empty, not necessarily by design, but more people have also luxury fatigue, I feel. A lot of people are just like done. And also, quite frankly, not everybody wants to spend $20,000 on a random baglet, you know. Next point, this one is interesting. The space is open, quiet, and controlled because silence equals status. Silence equals status. If silence equals status, if that were true, then quite a few elitist people out there, you know, entitled elitist people out there, maybe should take a note from this book and stop blabbering for a change, you know? So if it is true that silence equals status and you're obsessed with status so much, then maybe you should zip it next time, be a little bit more elegant, huh? Retrieve back to your cave and stay there in silence. A much better look on you than letting people force you into blabbering, you know, pushing you, you know, manipulating you into doing stuff, saying stuff that you're going to regret. But we digress. Luxury stores create a museum-like feel to slow you down and make the product feel like art. Now, I'm not so sure if they make the product feel like art, but it is true that a lot of Chanel boutiques do have that minimalist aesthetic where items are exhibited on almost like pedestals and they stand alone, illuminated from the top, and you feel like, oh my God, this is expensive. So yes, it's a trick. It's an optical illusion. It's a magic trick. They make you feel some type of way about the item, making you think, oh, this is expensive. And then they trick you into thinking, into justifying the price. However, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm not a big fan, surprise, surprise, of current Chanel design of their fashion boutiques. They're way too light, way too airy and spacey. I miss the days when Coco Chanel was the owner and still alive of her boutiques. There was such a beautiful Baroque and Byzantine darkness about her boutiques. They were amazing. And even in the Karl era, all the way through the 90s, up until the millennium change, you would enter a Chanel boutique, there was a lot of black and gold. So the walls would be black. There would be like a black nooks and niches, and there would be like gold accents, and there's a lot of darkness and shadow, slight illumination here and there. And it felt heavy, but it felt like you entered a cave of wonders and riches. And it was very Byzantine and very Baroque. And then in the 2000s era, in the Y2K era, everything shifted and Chanel went for the ethereal, open space, light, luminosity, beige, washed out gold, which they call champagne gold. I'm like, girl, give me a break. No, I'm not a big fan of the light Chanel spaces. I love the darkness. I love old school Chanel darkness. There are wonderful photos from the 60s of Chanel boutiques, especially in 31 Rue Cambon, where famous people went to shop. There, if you Google Nancy Sinatra going to Chanel or Barbara Streisand going to Chanel shopping in Paris, and there's photos of them in the boutique in 31 Rue Cambon, everything is black. Everything is black, and then they pull out these like black containers with like costume jewelry, and there's a beautiful photo of Nancy Sinatra holding a huge factice of Chanel No. 5, surrounded by darkness. I mean, delicious. That's the Chanel I really love and miss, you know? So, yeah, Chanel is pulling the shtick nowadays of like modern day museum, open spaces, a lot of air, a lot of light, a lot of sun, but I prefer the darkness when it comes to Chanel, you know. I prefer the mystery, the chiaroscuro, the Caravaggio chiaroscuro. Anyway, Just my opinion. Next point, you'll rarely see prices, they say. Chanel doesn't want you to be focused on cost. They want you focused on story, design, heritage, and exclusivity. Price becomes secondary to emotion. Partially true, but I don't play that game. I know a lot of people write me and say, Dacob, I really feel like I don't feel comfortable to go into any luxury boutique because I feel like I have to be, I'm pressured into buying something, into spending money. And if I don't have that money, I feel uncomfortable to even walk in and see. I'm like, girl, don't let them mess with your mind and your self-esteem. They're not working in that boutique because they're rich and this is their hobby. They're working there because they need the money. So they should not be looking down at you, but instead they should acknowledge the fact that we're all working for our money. Very few people are Nepo babies that can just inherit the money. Most people have to work for their money. So there's no need to judge people. And there's no need to look down at people. And when people look down at people, those type of people disgust me. Like the elitist snobs are the most disgusting people out there. And they will never have my respect. Never. Why? Because they don't respect anybody. They think they get to rule the world. Sorry, boo-boo, hate to break it to you. Not everybody's the Oompa Loompa working for you that you can just boss around. And it doesn't work that way. So when I go to Chanel Boutique and I see something I like, I'm very direct to the sales associate. I don't act around. I don't do like, oh yeah, lovely, wrap it up, wrap it up. No, I'm like, oh, that looks nice. How much is it? And then they pull out the tag and show you the tag. And if I think the thing is too expensive, I'm gonna say it to their face. I'm gonna be like, really? You want $10,000 for a flower? Girl, let's be real. And then we have a laugh together because they know it's overpriced. They know it. So when you talk to them eye to eye and you're like reasoning with the sales associates, I'm like, look, this is not your store. You didn't make this flower by hand on your own. You're selling it. You're selling it. You're trying to sell it. It's not working with me because there's not enough magic in the world that's going to make this thing be worthy the $10,000. You know what I mean? So to each their own, obviously, for some people, it's like, oh my God, $10,000, give me 3 of them. But not to me. So of course I ask for the price. Of course I ask for the price. I don't feel intimidated by them. Why should I? Why should I? I want to know. I want to know, what am I paying for? How much does it cost? Anya says in the chats, I told Chanel about their $1,000 sunglasses. When they said they were $1,000, I was like, yeah, right. No more than 500. And even 500 is a lot, but we digress. Emotion Engine says, exactly, they can't afford it either. Oh, please. No sales associate at Chanel has a $10,000 monthly salary. People, wake up. With all the bonuses and extras that you accumulate, a regular sales associate at Chanel does not earn $10,000 a month. So it's also very bizarre for the people because they lose sense of what money is. Because if you're a sales associate at Chanel and you're used to having these extremely wealthy people shopping there every day and you're selling, 20 bags a day and each bag is $10,000 to $20,000, like, you're making the company so much money every day, but then you don't, and you work a whole month and you don't earn the fraction of what one of these bags cost. The discrepancy is insane. Let's go back in history just a little bit. You remember when Ford cars were just initiated in America? And Mr. Ford said, I want my workers in the Ford factory to be able to afford a Ford car. That was the deal back in the day. We have lost touch with what is actually acceptable morally. We have lost touch with what is actually normal in society. A few CEOs have become super greedy and they want everything, and everybody else has to live in poverty. That's where we've come to. That's the world we live in now. Okay? So unionize, people. Unions are really important. They really are. Because they help you get decent salary. They help you get on a health program. They help you get health insurance, dental care, and they protect you from being exploited by the big man. And looking at you too, Chanel. Huh? I know you've changed your rules and regulations, making it worse for your workers. Please, I know. Everything I say in this video is for entertainment purposes only, not rooted in truths or facts. Everything's alleged and just my opinion. Next point. Sales associates are trained like luxury concierge people. They don't push, they build rapport, they make you feel chosen, like you're not just buying Chanel, Chanel is choosing you. Yeah, I've had a moment with some sales associates at Chanel that did work this way, but I've also worked with Chanel sales associates that were way more ratchet. They were like, come on, girl, you can afford it. Buy that. Come on, get it, get two. I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? When they try to be like, ha ha ha, friendly, but then all of a sudden pushy, I'm like, well, we're done. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Zonzua, little girl. Zonzua. So, but yes, if they do their job properly, they are like a luxury concierge, very elegantly delivering, tactfully delivering the message, the product, the price, taking you to the cash register, not doing the cash register. There's another person who does the cash register while they take your product to the back to wrap it up. So, yeah, period. Next point, even the lighting is strategic. Soft, warm lights highlight the product. Mirrors and reflections are used carefully. Everything is designed to make the bag and you look better. It is. And what is really important, very big dressing rooms. They feel very luxurious. They feel opulent. You always have a little couch, a little sofa in your dressing room. It's all made in tweed and leather. There's a little perfume bottle there. There's a little a bathrobe in there. Like, there's little outfits that you can wrap yourself around, or to put on if you have makeup on, to protect the face, to protect the garment you're putting on so that it doesn't get stained with the makeup. Like, they have everything. Tissues, cleaning stuff, little tray with drinks while you're trying on the clothes. Beautiful. Chanel has really wonderful dressing rooms. They're beautiful. Always beautiful. I've never seen an ugly Chanel dressing room. They are top notch. Lighting is wonderful. The mirrors are really good. Slightly slimming. Very, very lovely. Chanel dressing rooms are lovely. And then here's a big mistake. This article says they never do discounts. Chanel doesn't run Black Friday sales, no outlet stores, no clearance bins, because the price is part of the power. That is incorrect. Chanel does 2 sales a year, at least. Then they do sample sale, then they do staff sale. But for the public, there are 2 sales a year. Usually one in like June and the other one is somewhere in December or January, depending which country you're in. But they have one winter sale, one summer sale. The bags don't go on sale. The clothing goes on sale. However, their strategy for sales is slightly different than other brands. Other brands, the summer collection starts arriving in February and then it goes on sale in July, August. Not with Chanel. With Chanel, Spring Summer 26 is going to arrive in, let's say, March 26, and then it's going to go on sale the next year, Summer 27. So their stuff stays in store for an entire year before it goes on sale. And with their new regulations, when it does go on sale, it goes on sale at 40%, not 50%. It used to be collections of 2 years ago are 50% and collections from last year are 30% off at the sale. So they had this discrepancy between 2 years, 50%, 1 year, 30%. They've unified that. There's no more 50-30. They only do 40% on last year or 2 years ago, if they have something left over. Now, currently, in 2025 and for upcoming 2026, I don't know what their sales strategy is. But I can tell you this much. This summer, I don't think Chanel was doing that well because for the first time ever, they also put their boutique exclusive sunglasses on sale, which I've never seen them do that really. And they put their boutique exclusive sunglasses that are made by Luxottica at 40% off as well, which is very rare. Like they must be going through some hardships if they're also reducing their eyewear. But I digress. Let's see what happens this next cycle of sales. But it's not true that Chanel doesn't do sale. They just don't reduce their bags. They don't reduce their fine jewelry. They reduce their shoes. They reduce some costume jewelry, not everything. They reduce their apparel. They do not reduce haute couture, of course. So there's that. And then they say the packaging is part of the experience. Black and white, heavy ribbon, matte box. Unboxing a Chanel item feels like a ritual. That's not branding, it's behavioral conditioning. Now, this was the case back in the day when their boxes were still kind of cool. Nowadays, they're working, I think they're greenwashing a little bit. They're saying, oh, our bags are, they say our bags are sustainable, biodegradable. They're working with these biodegradable pulps, this mattified paper. If this gets wet, it breaks immediately. I'm not a big fan of the current quality of their packaging. I think it's subpar. You can do sustainable, biodegradable products that are still luxury. This feels like, let's save money. This doesn't feel luxury to me. Their bags fall apart super easy. Like these things are just glued in. They used to be knotted in, the little handles. Now, if the bag is a little bit too heavy, like you have 2 pair of shoes in there in a box, this can just like snap off. These used to be cotton, now it's paper. This is even paper. I'm not, I'm not a big fan of their current quality of their packaging. I think they cheapened out, just for the sake of maximizing their profits. This doesn't feel luxury to me. It used to, oh my gosh, in America, Chanel had lacquered shopping bags in black, glossy, beautiful. In Europe, they were white. And then 31 Rue Cambon still has the 31 Rue Cambon insignia on there. But yeah, not a fan of these new ones. Hopefully they'll change again, maybe when they start earning more money. But like, I don't like this excuse that a lot of brands are using, saying, oh, we're trying to be more sustainable, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but you're making a cheaper product, but you're charging more for it. So I don't know. Not a fan of their current packaging, if I'm honest with you guys. Next point, their stores are rarely on busy streets. They're in elite zones next to art galleries, historic hotels, and other iconic brands. They place themselves where status lives. For the most part, yes. But some of their beauty boutiques are also placed in shopping centers. So it's not always the case. Their fashion boutiques, however, for the most part, are in more luxury areas. But also some of their fashion boutiques are also in shopping centers. Chanel also controls supply on the resale market. They've sued resellers. They limit how many bags customers can buy per year because too much availability kills mystique. They have sued quite a few resellers, and we've talked about it on my channel a lot. They do have limitations on how many bags you can buy per month or per quarter or per style or blah, blah, blah. It is also true that if a sales associate and if the store manager of said boutique trusts you, they can override those limits if they want to. If they don't want to, they will not. Next point, their price hikes are deliberate. In the last 10 years, the price of a classic flatback has more than doubled, not due to inflation, but because rising price equals rising desire. True. Rising desire, but also I have a feeling they were running against time because it almost feels like all of these luxury brands knew they gotta gobble up as much money as possible during the lockdown when people, we're not traveling, we're not spending money on other stuff, and they had like extra disposable income to spend on futile luxury items. And they're like, let us collect as much money as we can now because this time will come to an end and people will stop buying as much. So let's boost our bank accounts so that we can then later, when the dip comes, we can use that money to get through a little bit harder times. And I think that's what Chanel is going through right now, even though they don't want to really say what they're going through, because they're a privately owned company, not publicly owned company. So they don't have to give official quarterly earning reports because they don't have stock and shareholders. They're a privately owned company. So Chanel discloses what it wants to disclose, period. And most brands chase more customers. Chanel chases fewer. They don't want mass appeal. They want timeless desire from a specific type of buyer. The more time passes and the more we realize that is the case. They still want your money, so they're going to create smaller items like lipsticks, nail polishes. That's the stuff that, they get you in. Or entry-level eyewear, sunglasses that start at like $300 or something, and then they go up to thousands. But they have the $40 lippy, the $40, the $30 nail polish. They have the $300 sunglasses. That's your entry level. And then it goes up from there. But they do want your money, even if you're an aspirational customer. They just don't want everybody to be able to buy the high-end, highest level tier item, like their iconic bags or, certain items that are just so timeless. Like those, they want to keep up there just out of reach so that you keep buying all those other things constantly, trying to fill that void because you want that hot ticket item, but you never really manage to reach it and you keep buying the other smaller items. And that's how they keep milking you all the time without ever giving you that full-blown satisfaction of owning the top tier item. But you get a taste for the brand by buying the little items constantly, and they get you hooked that way, right? So long term, you become a milking cow for them for many, many years because you keep buying the newest lipstick color, the newest nail polish color, but you never get to buy that highest level ticket item. They keep it just out of reach so that you're never fully fulfilled and you keep coming back for more. Very, very, very tricky. And if you are super rich and you can afford the high ticket item, then they have other ways to trick you. Then you have different tiers of VIP, VVIP, VVVVVIP, legacy. I don't know, so many different terminologies depending how much you spend. And then they never tell you what you need to spend to get to the next tier, but they show you that other customers are higher than you. They won't invite you to every event. They won't invite you to every fashion show. They won't send you to the expensive hotel where they pay the hotel to certain customers. Like there's different tiers, right? So even if you have money to spend, if you think, oh, I got, $500,000 to drop this year at Chanel, they're like, yeah, but there's another person who dropped $1 million. So, oh yeah, oh, those are psychological games they play. Basically, at the end of the day, there's never a top. There's no end. They will always find a way, no matter how much you spend, no matter how much you think you have got all the freebies, all the invites, everything. No, they will still find a way to be like, yeah, but there's still one more level you have not reached yet. They're masters at playing this game, in my humble opinion. Then they say Chanel built more than a brand. They built a psychological ecosystem, scarcity, storytelling, status, all wrapped in a box with a bow. This is how Chanel made buying a bag feel like joining a legacy. Period. Yeah, like I said, article has some flaws, but for the most part, they got it right. But this is not just Chanel, you guys. This is how luxury works. Luxury is an illusion. It's a dream. It's a fantasy. It's a way that a brand makes you feel, but more importantly, it's how you allow a brand to make you feel. Okay. I'm a huge sucker for Chanel perfumes. Beauty boutique, for me, their perfumes make me feel some type of way. They're just wonderful, beautiful. So when I go to a Chanel beauty boutique and I'm going shopping for perfumes, it's a full-blown experience for me. It's like my personal Disneyland. You know what I mean? It's like the room, the setup, the sofa, sitting down, getting, champagne, testing the perfume, sniffing from the bottle, spraying on the skin, putting it on the paper, having them all displayed in front of you, the conversation about the history, having the books of the perfumes next to you, looking through the books of the perfumes, looking at the photography of the perfumes, talking to the sales associate, getting little tips on what's coming next. We're not allowed to say, but we're going to tell you anyway. There's like this whole conversation going on. It is magical, surrounded by, these smells that are just wonderful. But anyway, I digress. That was the psychological game Chanel plays. Allegedly everything, of course. Let me know your thoughts down below. Did you like this video? If you did, thumb it up, subscribe, and never forget to never give up on love. Bye.